It's 5 o'clock, it's 5 o'clock, it's 5 o'clock in our town. They're singing, they're laughing, let's get the word on the ground. They're all excited, and we are all delighted. It's 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock in our town. Alright, after we have another story next week, we will tell us some more about what that verse means. Right now we're just going to learn the words. Okay, it's good for me that I have been afflicted, that I might learn thy statutes. You might try to think about what it means to be afflicted. How many of you, whoa, Ian, I would put that in a pocket before Pastor Goulden grabs it, or one of the other workers. Yeah, we won't say what that was. How many of you have ever gone on a long hike? Have you ever been on a long hike and it was warm outside? And what happens after you've been hiking for a while in the sun and the heat? What happens? You pass out. Well, hopefully you don't pass out. Aaron?
I got me.
Really? I think Stephen said it. Stephen, what did you say? You get thirsty. That's right. And so if you're thirsty, what do you need to keep from getting thirsty?
Water.
A whopper.
You need water. You need water. You're with me. I think I'd take a Whopper first and then with some water. But yes, really, we need water. Our bodies are made that way, aren't they?
You can drink water, a tea, a milk,
H2O is water. Listen now. Okay, listen. While we have to eat, we have to drink. Drinking is more important than eating. Believe it or not, listen, believe it or not, you and I could go for many days without eating. We would get hungry, but we wouldn't die. Stephen? No. But if you went for lots of days without water, you would die. You would die after about the 3rd or 4th day if you had no water. Water's next. The only thing more important than water is air. If you don't have air, you can't breathe, right? And if you can't breathe, you're going to die. But then you need water. Water's very important. Well, if you have too much water, I guess you would drown, yeah. But, so, that's just important for our lesson today, for the story. What happened to the people of Israel? Where are the people of Israel? Do you remember where the people of Israel are in our lessons, in their stories? They were in Egypt, right? They were in Egypt, and Pharaoh, the king, well, they wanted to leave Egypt, right?
Yes.
Moses went to Pharaoh and said, the God of Israel, Jehovah says, let my people go. And Pharaoh said, I don't know who Jehovah is, right? He said, who's Jehovah? Who's the God of Israel? I know lots of other gods, but I don't know him. I'm not letting them go. But did they get to go?
Yes.
Did the people of Israel get to go?
Yes.
Yes. What did God send to Egypt?
Sheep.
Sheep. What did he send? The death angel. The death angel. That was the 10th plague. What was the first plague? Blood. The river turned to blood, remember? And then the frogs came out of the river. And then lice. And then flies. And then disease. Yes, lice and flies. And then disease on the animals. Oh, that's 5. Let's see, what else was there? Then there was... Well, that was number 10. Then...
If you had a baby, then it would die.
That's number 10. Number 10. There was some other ones. There was darkness. That's number 9. There was boils on their from the head to their toe. There was lightning and fire on the land. There was locusts. All of those things. And finally, they got to leave. Remember? They got to leave. And then the next day, Pharaoh said, what?
Come back.
said, we shouldn't have let them go. And he got his armies and he chased them all the way. And the people of Israel were on the border of the water. Right? In front of them is the water. And this way and that way was nowhere to go because behind them was who? The army. The Egyptian army. Now listen, because this is important. Does anybody remember what God did? What God did? There's a few things he did. Let's see if you can remember the one I'm thinking of. Wait a second. Maddie had her hand up first. What did God do? He made a big cloud and it went, he put the big cloud between the Egyptians and the Israelites, right? And so God, who put that cloud there? God put that cloud there. That's right. And Jasmine, Moses put his rod over the sea. The water split. And the people of Israel, they went right across the sea on dry land, right? So they got to the other side, and then God moved the cloud again, didn't he? He moved the cloud, he picked the cloud up, and what did the Egyptian army do? They went into the sea on dry land, right? And then what happened? Moses? Then what happens? Aaron?
Closed the water and it washed all the
That's
army
right.
out.
It closed the water and it drowned and destroyed the army. So now all the people of Israel are free, right? They are free from being slaves in Egypt. So then, you know what happened? That cloud, it started moving. Now who moves the cloud? God. God moves the cloud. And so when they saw the cloud begin to move, Moses and Aaron said, it's time to move. We have to follow God, right? Because God, for them, God was in the cloud. Right? So we're going to follow the cloud wherever God takes it. So they're following the cloud and they're happy, aren't they? Because they no longer have any masters over them. They are free. God has destroyed their enemies. And they're on their way. And I can imagine Moses is up front. And Aaron is right next to him. And they're talking. Moses and Aaron are talking. And they might be saying, can you believe how God set us free from all the Egyptians? And destroyed them, and now we don't have anything to fear from the Egyptians. And Aaron might have said, it's amazing, Moses. And then he said, think of this. When our families came into Egypt, there was just like 75 or so, and now, man, it seems like there's over 2 million. God has multiplied us into being a great nation. And Aaron might have said, hey Moses, how do you think we're going to feed everybody on our trip? And Moses, I don't know, maybe he said, well, I don't know for sure. I've lived in this wilderness for 40 years and there's not a lot here. But God knows what he's doing. And so they walked along and pretty soon the cloud started going south. Now I have a map here. You see the line? This is the people of Israel on this line, and this is the Red Sea, right? And they crossed the Red Sea, and they kept going, and pretty soon the cloud went south. Now, do you know where they were going?
No.
They were going to Canaan. How would you go to Canaan? Wouldn't you go like that?
Yeah.
That's how I would go to Canaan. I would say, okay, let's go this way. But the cloud said, go this way. So, what do? Do you go your way?
They went that way. No.
Do you go this way?
No.
Why?
Because God doesn't want you to.
Right, because the cloud says, and it's not the cloud. Who's in the cloud?
Jesus.
God's in the cloud. The cloud says go this way. So they're following the cloud. And Moses might have been thinking, we're going the other way from where I thought we would be going. I wonder what's going on. But God is leading us. So they kept following that. And you can imagine it was hot. And they had some water and they had some food. They had packed all that the night before and all that. So they had their water. And I'll bet one of the kids said, "Hey, Mom, I'm getting thirsty." And so she said, "Okay, here's a little bit of water, right? It's warm out here. Don't drink it all. Save some for your brothers and sisters and Mom and Dad." And so they went through one day and they got to the end of the day. And you know what they didn't find through that whole day? They didn't find any more water. So only the water that they brought with them was what they had. And I can imagine that night, some of the leaders came to Moses and said, "Hey, Moses, do you know where we can find some water? You're in this area a lot more than us. We don't have any more water." Now, this is an animal skin. They would sew it up, and they could keep water in that bag, in an animal skin bag. And he said, "Well, we didn't see any water today. Let's just try to keep as much water as we have. Maybe we can share with your neighbors as we go along." And so they went to bed that night, and they got up the next morning, and the cloud kept moving. And when the cloud was moving, who's moving the cloud?
Jesus.
God. God is moving the cloud, and it kept going. Now, God made us, right? God made us, and so does God know that we need air?
Yes.
Does God know that we need water?
Yes.
Yeah, so God knew that the people of Israel needed water, right? So he wouldn't lead them somewhere just so they would die, right? But, so he's leading them, they're following the cloud, and pretty soon, no more water. And so they asked their neighbor, "Hey, do you guys have any water?" He says, "Well, I have just a little bit, but not enough for you. My kids need it." And pretty soon, even they didn't have water. And by the middle or the end of the second day, nobody had water. You think God is going to let them die?
No.
But they didn't have water. And you got to have water. Pretty soon. And that night, I'm sure some of them came to Moses and said, "Moses, what's going on? I thought God was leading us, but there's no water." They questioned God. They wondered, what's going on? Why would God do this? Or maybe they didn't even think about God. And the next day, they're going. It's the third day, and everybody's really thirsty. You know what they started doing? Complaining. Have you ever been around somebody who's complaining?
Yeah.
It's not nice to be around somebody who complains. But you know what else about complaining? Sometimes somebody complains, and what do we think? Yeah. And we start complaining too. And pretty soon, everybody, they were all complaining. I don't know how what they were saying, but they were complaining. They were like, "We don't have any water. What's Moses doing? What's Aaron doing? What's this cloud? There's no God in this cloud. We're just following this stupid cloud across the desert. We're going to die. There's no water." They're complaining. And then pretty soon, somebody saw water. Now, I'll bet some other people saw water. Have you ever been on a hot day and you look across the road and it looks like there's water out there and it's not really water? Well, this was really water. Some of them, they ran, they got to it. It was nasty water. It would have made them all sick if they drank that water. So then they came to Moses and they said, "Moses, you're leading us through the desert and there's no water, and now there's water, and this water is going to make us all sick. We can't do anything with this water. What are you doing?" And what do you think Moses did? What do you think Moses did? What did he have to do? Just kept on walking? Well, Moses, he believed God. He believed God was in the cloud. So he went to God and he prayed, said, "God, what am I supposed to do? You led us to take all the people out of Egypt. And if you don't take care of us, everybody's going to hear about us being out of Egypt, and then that you could rescue us from Egypt, but you couldn't take care of us in the wilderness. And God said to Moses, he said, see that tree over there by the water? Cut that tree down and put it in the water. Now, does that make sense to us?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't really make sense to us. But Moses did it, even though we might wonder, why is that Moses? So he said, cut that tree down. And they put the tree in the water. He said, now you can drink the water. And they could. They got all the water they needed. And that was a lot of water, right? For over 2 million people. It's a lot of water. God provided water for them. He fixed that place. Now, that place was called, can anybody read that word right there? Mara. That's right. And you know what the word Mara means?
Yeah.
You know what the word Mara means? It means, Amos, what does it mean? It means bitter. They called it Mara because the water was bitter. We might say nasty, but it was bitter. The water was bitter, so they called it Mara. Well, a little bit later, after they got all their water, they went to another place where there was palm trees and 12 wells of water. There was plenty of water. And so they were okay then, and weeks passed, and they kept going. The cloud kept leading them, kept leading them, kept leading them. They left the place with all the palm trees, and they got to another spot, and there was no more water. Now, this is the second time that there was no water. They went through a day, and maybe another day, and no water. Now, what do you think they would do this time? What do you think they would do this time if there's no water and the cloud is leading them along, and so there's no water? Jocelyn, what do you think they would do?
They told Moses that there's no more water, and they started complaining.
You think they did?
No.
Well, they just saw God take care of them the time before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But what did they do?
They kept complaining.
They started complaining. That's right. And you know how we know that's true? Because we do the same thing, don't we? Have you ever complained?
No.
Yeah. We have complained. Does God like it when we complain?
No.
No. They came to Moses and they said, Moses, now you know you're taking us further into the wilderness and you're just trying to kill us here. What? There's no God in that cloud. But Moses went to God and prayed to him. And God said, Moses, take some of the leaders, take the leaders of the people, and take them to the rock that's up a little ways into the mountain, the rock of Horeb. And I'm going to have you hit the rock. And when you hit the rock, I will give water to the people. Now, how many of you have ever seen water come out of a rock? Water doesn't come out of rocks, does it? I mean, just sitting there, a rock. I mean, like if I hit the brick wall, and water comes out. No. You think Moses was thinking, God, now you're really... You think he thought that? Because Moses had already seen water turn to blood, right? And flies, and he'd seen God do lots of things. So he took the leaders of the people there, and he went to the rock of Horeb, it's called, and he hit the rock with his rod. And when he hit the rock with his rod, a gushing flow of water came out. Enough water to create a stream. Enough water so that 2 million people could drink from that water. Now that's a miracle, isn't it? God took care of the people of Israel. Did God let the people of Israel get thirsty?
No.
No. 3 days with no water? Did he let them get thirsty? Yes. He let them get thirsty, but he didn't let them die, did he? No. God wanted them to get thirsty so that they could learn to trust him. Does God let bad things come into our lives sometimes?
Yes.
Sometimes he does. He lets us have hard times, but he does those hard times are for our good. Remember the verse we had several months ago? And we know that all things work together for good?
God lets bad things come to us so that we can learn to trust Him. And we're going to hear next week about some other things. KK? I'm telling the story. Don't cheer. Keep your hands still. You're old enough to sit still. We're going to be learning for the next few weeks how God takes care of us. The word in the Bible, or the word that we say is called providence. God orchestrates, God makes everything work in certain ways so that what He wants done gets done. And you know what the greatest thing is that ever happened that God worked out? It was the strangest thing. If no one but God could make it all work perfectly. And it happened in about 5 days, 2,000 years ago. Somebody was supposed to be born in Bethlehem, but his mom and dad lived in Nazareth. But God worked it out so that Joseph and Mary had to go to a certain spot at a certain time. God had a star in the sky at a certain time, at a certain spot. He worked everything out so that Jesus would be born in Bethlehem, because that's the most important thing that ever happened in all the world. More important than people getting water from a rock, isn't it? Yeah, because if Jesus had never came, no one would be saved, would they? Because we talked all last month about being redeemed. The only way we can be redeemed is through Jesus' blood. And if He had never come, no one would be redeemed. But God worked it out. He worked all the details out. And that's God's providence. And we're going to be learning more about the providence of God over the next few weeks.